Hello, this is JB. I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. And today I'm going to talk about uh, my memories of the tile business growing up. And at that time, uh, the tile business in my family, which my grandfather started way back in 1952, it was run by my uncle. It was called C.S. Brown Tile and Marble, Chris Shane Brown Tile and Marble. And it's in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, long story short, he started in tile business around 1972. He, he was encouraged by the school principal not to come back to the ninth grade because of the way that he was. And so he went to the tile business because my grandfather was already in the business. And he had a very strong personality. He was a very hard worker and he was very motivated. He was very focused. And so he learned very quickly and he did very well. And about that same time, my grandfather was losing interest in the tile business and he was focusing on all of his hobbies, which I talked about in the previous video about BJ Brown Tile and Marble. Um, but my uncle Chris, he started to take control of the business and especially the finances, and he was kind of running things. There were several workers there, including my dad, and he and my dad did built the business together. Chris was in charge of a lot of the finances and um, some of the decisions, but they did everything together. They were on all the jobs together, um, and they worked hand in hand. They were a team in the literal sense. And they took a good company. My grandfather had success, and they made it way better. And at that time in the 70s, Charlotte began to transform. It was a small city and it became a much bigger city because in 1978 there was deregulation of the financial industry. And Charlotte was already a banking town, but prior to 1978, um, banks could not expand outside of their borders. So, like a bank that was headquartered in North Carolina could not have subsidiaries in South Carolina or Texas or California or anywhere else. All of its assets had to be in North Carolina. And when that deregulation happened, uh, a couple of the banks, um, First Union and Bank of America, they began to merge and also merge with other banks and also buy other banks. And they became regional banks and then national banks and in some senses international banks now. And with that came a growing population and growing wealth. So there was a lot more money in Charlotte. People had more money to buy homes and to put tile in them, tile and marble. So this benefited the company that my uncle was operating. And it's not exactly clear when my uncle took over um, for the 70s and the 80s. I think the company was still in my uh, grandfather's name technically, but my uncle was making the financial decisions and making a lot of the money. My grandfather was making a good amount of money too, but uh, my uncle was like the main manager. And but uh, he realized that the city was growing, the opportunity was growing, and he took advantage of it. And they started to uh, install tile in a larger area around Charlotte. They expanded to like Lake Wylie, south of Charlotte, Lake Norman, north of Charlotte. Um, they did a lot of work in Myers Park and the area of South Park in this area called Moorcroft, but also in the areas like Piper Glen, Ballantyne. This was in the 90s. But pretty much, well, Providence Country Club, which is on the edge of Union County to the east of Charlotte. Um, and around the towns of Davidson and Huntersville and Mooresville, where Lake Norman is. And they went a lot of other places too. Every once in a while, they would do work at the beaches, sometimes in the mountains. Um, but they just spread out, and they grew from being a couple of employees, maybe 4 or 5, depending on the time, because it always changed depending on how much work they had, to um, in the late 90s, my uncle probably had 15 employees or so, and they were working. I mean, when I was growing up in the 90s, my dad worked a lot of times 7 days a week, sometimes 6 days for the company, and sometimes 5 days for the company, and then he did side jobs. He was always working at night too, so he was working all the time. But they were really doing a lot. And my earliest memories in life came in my dad's truck. I was like 3 years old, 88, 89, and 2 or 3, I'm not exactly sure. But I remember being in my dad's truck in the floorboard. My mom took me to a job site where my dad was finishing up, put me in the truck while my dad was putting his tools up, cleaning everything up, and loading the truck. And then we left, and I guess we went back home or we went somewhere. But throughout my childhood, uh, I was always with my dad in a truck going somewhere, either to a job or someplace. And I worked with him. Uh, I went to a lot of jobs with him in the summertime, and on the weekends, at nights. Um, we had when I was in elementary school, we had year-round school, so we had the strange schedule where we would go to school for, I think it was 8 weeks, and have 2 weeks off or something like that. And so we'd have weeks off when everybody else was in school, and my dad didn't have a babysitter. My mom was at work, so he would take me and sometimes my sister to work with him, and we worked. He worked at a bunch of places, and we were with him, and so we got to watch him and see how he worked, and see a bunch of different places that we weren't really used to because we're from lower middle class, sometimes poor, but poor only in the sense that we didn't have money at that particular time, but we're lower middle class family, and so our neighborhood was a lot different than the neighborhoods that he was working in because they mostly worked in high-end custom homes, very expensive. In that time, these were like anywhere between 300,000 and 700,000. Most of them, maybe some were a million, but the same houses now would be like several million, $2, $3, $4 million houses. Really big houses. A lot of different business people um, they work for, and some local celebrities like athletes, players for the Charlotte Hornets or the Panthers or NASCAR, people that were involved in NASCAR. The Panthers, I remember Mike Fox, he was a defensive end on the inaugural team. There was a coach, Blair Bush, who he worked for. Um, my cousins went to school with at Charlotte Latin with two of the sons of Sam Mills, the famous linebacker. Um, and the Hornets, Mike Jaminski worked in his house. I was actually there for that one. I got his autograph later on after he had moved in. My dad was working in another house, and he pulled up, and I met him and got his autograph. And he was a really nice guy. He was driving a Jeep Cherokee, and he had these great big dogs that knocked holes in his wall. But so I met him, and then my dad worked in Larry Johnson's house. I think right after Larry Johnson was drafted, early '90s. We worked near Dell Curry's house. He's the father of Steph Curry and Seth Curry, and there were others. Robert Parrish was one, um, and then Kurt Rambis was one. He was on one of the early Charlotte teams, but he's more famous for his play with the Lakers. And then Cedric Maxwell, who did never play for the Hornets, but he did go to school at UNC Charlotte and play basketball there, and he was on the 1977 or 8 Final Four team. And I think that's all that I can think of. For the Spencer Stolfen, who was the general manager at one time of the Charlotte Hornets. And I think that's all. But with NASCAR, there were a lot of different NASCAR owners that they worked for at different times, and drivers too. Rick Hendrick, Felix Sabates, Joe Gibbs. Let's see. Later on, Jeff Gordon and Rusty Wallace. That was after my uncle merged his company, and I'll talk about that. But there were different people. I remember one time we were working in the Eastover neighborhood, very high-end, older neighborhood in Charlotte. We were working at this yellow house, and the owner of that house was John Belk from the Belk family, and the Belk family owned they sold it, but they used to own a lot of department stores, a big department store chain that was well known throughout the Southeast and in different parts of the country. But John Belk had been the mayor of Charlotte, and he was the patriarch of the family at that time, and he was in his 80s. I didn't meet him, but we were told about him when I was there, and we were told that my dad was working on the front walkway, and it had brick pavers, and the superintendent was telling my dad how the brick pavers needed to be very smooth, because sometimes women went to dinner parties there and they were in heels and they didn't want to get tripped up on the pavers. But there was very nice neighborhoods there, and I learned a lot by being with my dad about work, because a lot of what he did in the 90s was repair work, and also point up. So he was the last person to touch the job. He would clean, he would caulk, he would make it presentable, and he was very detail oriented, and he liked things to be a certain way, and he expected himself to meet a certain level. And so he taught me about how to work and to do things the right way the first time, and to be professional. Like when he filled out paperwork for me when I was in school, and they asked his occupation, he wouldn't say tile setter or tile installer. He would always say professional tile setter or tile installer, and that's the way he looked at it, professional. And I remember a lot of different jobs, but I'll talk about a couple. One of them was at Lake Norman. We were working in the area of Robert Parrish's house, but not at his house. But we were working on this back porch. We were putting cobblestone there, and we were just setting it in place. I don't even think he was using thinset or anything. But my job was to carry these cobblestones from the stack over to where he was, and stack them up so that he could grab them and put them in place. And he was following this pattern. It was two big ones and one small one, two big ones and one small one, and they were staggered so that every row was slightly different than the next. And what I remember about that day was it was hot and it was hard work and the stones were heavy because I was younger. I was maybe fourth grade, third grade, and he told me like to be careful because I could hurt my hands, but there were spiders. The what was it called? The brown recluse, and the brown recluses they like the crevices between the cobblestones. That's where they hung out because it was couldn't exactly remember the reason that they hung out there, but probably because it was darker and it was dry or damp. I don't know which one, but they were always there. And so he said, "Hey, watch out for the brown recluse because if you get bit, you're gonna have a problem." And I was allergic to everything at that point, so I was always careful. But I remember we went and got some BK Big Fish, and uh, we were always listening to the radio when we were at work and in the truck and stuff. But that afternoon we were working, and I was carrying the cobblestones, and someone came. It was either a superintendent or the owner of the house, but they came. My dad got up and he went over and talked to them. And while he was doing that, I started doing my dad's job, which was to put the stones in place. And I was following the pattern. I was counting to make sure everything was right. And the guy my dad was with was like, uh, "Watch him go." And my dad was like, "That's my son." Like he was proud that I was doing that, and that I was working hard while he was talking to that man. And I always remember that because it made me feel really good that my dad saw what I was doing, and that other person saw what I was doing, and that my dad was proud of me, and that it made my dad look good that I was taking his place, and that I was keeping it going, keeping the work going. And that was a long time ago. That was like 30 years ago. But I remember it very clearly. And that's one of the things that gives me good feelings about my time working with my dad and being around my dad and the tile industry. And another one was on nights and weekends, me and my dad were doing this job for this man. I always forget his name, but he had a home in Mint Hill, North Carolina, and he used to be a appliance salesman, and he had this brick um, front porch that was elevated. It was about 4 or 5 feet off the ground, but something was wrong, and it was falling. It was falling in. It was caving in. So our job was to come and clean it out. So we um, got a jackhammer one Saturday, and we jackhammered out the whole porch. Took the pieces of brick and concrete, put them in the back of a dump truck, and hauled them off. But I remember using the jackhammer because it was heavy. I think I was in sixth grade, um, fifth grade, uh, somewhere around there, fifth or sixth grade. But that jackhammer was heavy. It was probably weighed about as much as I did. I'm gonna guess like 80 pounds. And he helped me like balance it because it has to be balanced or it's gonna fall over on me. And so he helped me balance it, and then we turned it on, and he kind of had his sh- hands on my shoulders at one point, and then he just had his hands behind me just to make sure I didn't fall backwards. But just having him there gave me the strength to do it because normally I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. But with his support and with his encouragement, I was able to do it. And that's another thing that gives me a lot of good feeling because I was with my dad, I had his support, he saw that I was doing something good, and I was showing him that I could do something, and he was proud of that, I think, and he uh, think I enjoyed it more than him, but we enjoyed those times together, uh, and we accomplished a lot. It was a hard job. So it was a lot of work to do. He had to repair one of the walls of this porch because it had a had brick walls, and then it had dirt inside. And then after we tore it out, we put rebar in there, and then they laid new concrete, and then we put brick on top. Um, but so he laid some brick, even though he wasn't a brick mason. He taught himself how to do it. He laid the brick. It was good. And then we completed the job, and it looked really good, and he got paid for it. And the people, oh, the last name was Barber, but they were very happy with the job, and they they paid. And I remember one Saturday I did watch the UNCC basketball game, so that might tell me what year it was, maybe 96, 97. But and one time I think I remember hearing something about the Panthers. Uh, but that was just a good memory because it was a big job for us, one guy and his son. Um, but we completed it. And I remember like a few months after that, we were driving past the job, and my dad pulled into the driveway. It was a long driveway. He pulled up to the job, to the front porch, and he went on the porch and he started pouring water um, all over the brick and doing these tests that weren't necessary and weren't required. He didn't have an agreement with them that made him have to do this. He just started doing it, and he wanted to see if water was pooling anywhere. Um, and it did pool in a couple places because some of the brick papers were a little low. And he put X's on those bricks, and he took them out on his own, even though he didn't have to. They didn't even know that there was anything wrong. They were perfectly happy with the job. And it wouldn't have caused a problem for anyone, even if the water had pooled, if it rained a lot or something, and the water had pooled a lot, it wouldn't matter because the brick, it's porous, so water gets sucked up by it anyway. So even if the water landed on it, it would just get sucked up. And then with the sun, especially in the summertime, in the heat, it would have dried up really quick, and nobody would have been bothered by the water at all. But my dad knew that something was like there was little teeny tiny problems, and so he fixed it on his own. And I told my dad when he was doing it, I said, "Dad, this is not necessary. It's not required. You don't have to do this." Um, and he said, "Yeah, I know." But I said, "Nobody will know." And he said, "But I'll know. My work has to meet my standard." And so he fixed it on his own. He didn't charge them anymore. He always had on his side work, and still to this day, he always had a warranty. And like no questions asked if somebody said something's wrong, and they almost never do. He just fixes it and doesn't charge, doesn't argue with them. He just fixes it. But he taught me um, more than anyone else about quality and about doing things the right way and about craftsmanship, quality craftsmanship, we always say. Um, and speaking of that, like with my uncle's company, uh, one that my dad worked for during the week and sometimes on the weekends, uh, they used quality craftsmanship as their tagline because that's what they wanted to be known for, him and my dad. And they were known for that. They were known as the best because they were the best. And people who could afford the best work went to them because um, that's what they offered. And so they had a really good reputation with so many different builders in the Charlotte area. I can't even think of them all right now. But Potter and Poor and so many different others. But they had long-term relationships with those people. Coral, Simonini, Coral Construction, Simonini. They had long-term relationships with those people because those companies knew that my uncle and my dad and the people that worked with them were going to give them a quality product, and they were going to do what they said they were going to do, if not more. And everybody who knew my uncle and my dad, they've always talked about the quality of their work. And I remember at one point my uncle was on a commercial, or his work was at least. I don't remember if he was, but I remember seeing the commercial, and my dad saying that he was in it. But I don't remember the commercial very clearly. I just remember it happening. But my uncle was respected very much for his work, and he was known for his business acumen because he grew the company from just a few people to, I don't know, 15, 20 by the time he stopped working as a single company, like self-employed or sole proprietorship. And I'll talk about that later. They ended up merging with another company that my uncle had, and actually my grandfather had known that family for a long time, but I'll talk about that in another video. That's the Morgan family. But I remember one time when I was a kid, I was in 6th grade. I think this was, I'll have to look. It was the summer of Hurricane Danny in Charlotte, so that was 97, I think, between 5th and 6th grade. But one summer I was staying at my uncle's house for a couple weeks because my dad needed a break. And one day my uncle came to me and he said, "Hey, you're going to work tomorrow." And this was like, whether you like it or not. And so I woke up early and I went with my cousin who was driving my grandfather's old truck. It was a red Nissan 1992 or so truck. And we went to this job off of Providence Road near the Union County line. And we were working at this house that was owned by the headmistress at the private school, Charlotte Latin, where my cousins went, 3 of them, Ben, Daniel, and Lizzie. And the headmistress's name was Lala, or something like that, Lele Lala. But anyway, so at her house, they were doing brick pavers, these thick brick pavers, and me and my my uncle and his oldest son Ben, who runs the company currently, they were on the porch and they were putting the bricks into place, and me and my uncle's second son, Daniel, we were carrying the bricks to them so that they could put them in place, and we were mixing the setting materials, and it was hard work because it was really hot. I don't know the temperature, but probably somewhere in the 90s. And we worked all day, and we didn't take any breaks because that's the way they worked. They were just constantly going. And I kept up with my cousin, even though my cousin was older, a lot bigger. He was, I think, in 9th grade at the time, maybe more, 10th grade. And I was going into 6th grade, I think. But I was a lot smaller than him. But I kept up with him, and we kept both guys, my uncle and my cousin, with enough brick, and we got the job done in one day. and it could have taken longer than a day, but we got it done, and it was up to standard. It was good, but the next day I was at the skating rink with my cousin, my youngest cousin Lizzie, his daughter, his third child, my uncle's third child, and we were at the skating rink, and I told my cousin, I said, I worked all day yesterday, and your dad only gave me $5. And she said, well, she said, I understand what you're saying, Jared, but if you have a problem with my dad, you need to talk to my dad. So I said, okay. So I think the next day, uh, he came home in the middle of the day at lunchtime, which was not normal. He came home in the middle of the day at lunchtime because their dog was a German Shepherd. I forget the name, but the German Shepherd was being put down because some had some sort of infection, I think, in the leg. And the vet came over and put the dog down. We were sitting by the little pond where their rental house was while they were building a new house. And let's see. And while this was happening, we were in the kitchen, or after that happened, we were in the kitchen, and I said, "Hey, Uncle Chris, I need to talk to you." I said, "I worked with you guys yesterday, and it was really hard, and we got a lot done. And it was good." I said, "But you only gave me $5, and I earned more than that." And he got really mad. He was quick to get mad his whole life, like, his neck, like, uh, enlarged in size, and you could see like the veins popping. You're like that, and he started cussing and getting mad, and he said he gave me $20, and he said that I earned it, but he said don't fucking come back, and he was like that. Like, he would get really mad just because he didn't want to come off the money, even though he had a lot of money. Um, he didn't want to come off of it, but I think and I hope that, like, he realized that I did deserve that much money and more, and I think and I hope that he respected that I asked for what I thought I deserved. And so he gave me $20, so I got $25, which is a lot of money for me in the '90s, going into the sixth grade. And so I got it, and it was fine. But I always say that's my first labor dispute, because it was, other than like arguing with my mom about chores. It was my first labor dispute, and I won that to some degree, and so that was a good memory. But my uncle, he did very well financially. He grew up poor or middle class, and then when my grandfather started to do well, uh, my grandfather did his own thing. Like I said before, he was riding horses and fixing cars and developing real estate and flying airplanes and doing all these different things, and he wasn't really focusing on the business. And my uncle saw that the business could make a lot of money, and he grew it, and he started to do really well. And he started investing in rental properties and buying really nice homes, like homes that I could never imagine living in. Homes like the homes that we were working in. These are what you would call rich people's houses, because he was pretty close to rich, if not actually rich. And he, at one point, I think I was in fifth grade, my grandfather told me that my uncle was making $600,000 a year, which is a lot of money even now. But he was making $600,000 a year. And then when I was in sixth grade, maybe seventh grade, one day I was in the library at lunchtime at school, because sometimes we didn't have lunch money. And so I would just go to the library because I was embarrassed to be around my friends at lunchtime with no food. And we had the internet. The internet was coming along then, and I got online, and they had this new um, website that basically guessed, but they estimated how much companies were worth. And so I looked up his company, and it said that the company was making $2 million a year. Uh, well, one of his companies that he was involved in, Charlotte Tile, and then his company was making 1.5 million, and it estimated how many employees were there, and I don't think they were making exactly that much, but that was an estimate. And so I went to my uncle and I told him how what that website said, and he he got pissed off because like he didn't like the fact that I knew something or at least had an idea of how well he was doing, even though like you could see it. Like he had a Jaguar when I was a kid, and then he got a Porsche. He had a Mercedes Benz. Later they got a Cadillac um, SUV, and he always had really nice cars and big houses, and uh, he had all sorts of things that he called toys, like very expensive guns that were like $1,000, and like all kind of opportunities. Like he sent his kids to the most expensive private school in the area, which I think at that time was like $15,000 per year per kid. And I said one time, I said, you pay more for your kid's education than my dad makes in a year. And he said, yeah, what's your point? And so, like, my dad, even though they were doing this work together, my dad wasn't getting the same benefits as my uncle. And that affected me a lot. Not just that we didn't have the money, but that I wasn't able to sometimes um, have the things that I needed. And I didn't have opportunities that my cousins had. They played all kinds of sports, did all kind of things, had all sorts of opportunities that I just didn't have. And social status, socioeconomic status was much different, and that affected me because, um, like, I didn't get to meet the right people to get more opportunities like they got because they were in the most expensive private school, and so they met the right people. And then one of my cousins, the oldest one, he went to Davidson College where he played football for 1 year and played baseball for 4 years, and then he ended up becoming a partner in the company and then owning the company later on. But he met a person who gave him a great opportunity to work as a tire changer with the NASCAR team where he made a lot of money. Believe it or not, just as a tire changer, he made like something like $100,000 a year, and that was because he met the changer or the pit crew chief when the pit crew chief played sports for another private school, and but so he had all these different opportunities to meet people and do things that I didn't get the chance to do. And so, like, I didn't get to go to high school, and I'll talk more about this in the next video I make about Brown and Morgan, the next iteration of the company. But I did have a lot of good memories of uh, this company, CS Brown Tile and Marble, because I was always on the job with my dad, and so we would ride from Monroe, Indian Trail, where we lived, every morning, go to Charlotte, East Charlotte, off of Eastway Drive. There was a place called Charlotte Tile where we had and even before that, off of Central Avenue, they used to have a stall at Renfro Tile. But we would go to Central Avenue or Eastway Drive, and they had a place called Charlotte Tile where they had a stall. And every morning, all the guys who worked for the company would come there, and they would find out where they were going to be working that day, and they would get their materials, um, their tile, and their thin set, their sand, or whatever else, grout, whatever else they needed. But while they were doing that, like, we would all talk and joke and play around. And these guys were all adult men, and I was a kid, but so we would wrestle around and play fight, and they would joke with me, and I would joke with them, and they would they were almost always friendly with me, and some of them called me Rockhead, but because they said I was hard headed. But then they figured out that wasn't a very nice name to call somebody, especially a kid. So then they started calling me Hard Rock, and you know, I remember at Charlotte Tile when we would go there in the mornings. One Saturday, I think it was, we played, and we did it a lot of times. But one time I can remember we played basketball because they had a basketball hoop inside the warehouse there. We played basketball, and my cousins, older one, Ben, and his younger brother Daniel, they would put me on a dolly and push me around the dock, or put me on the what do you call it? The damn, I forget what you call it. Anyway, this thing that you load stuff on, and they would push me around on that, and not pallet jack. What the fuck is that thing called? But push me around on that, or we'd wrestle, and just mess around. But we just had a lot of good memories, and a lot of those guys became my friends when after I graduated high school and I went to work there. I mean, they were already my friends, but they became like my coworkers and my friends, and we worked together. Um, I did work some when I was younger, when I was a kid, elementary school and middle school and high school, but we were working more as equals when I was an adult. But I liked it when everybody from the company, or a lot of the people from the company, were there uh, at jobs. I remember going one time I was at a job, or my dad was working at, I was with him, and there were some guys from the company down the street, so I went over there, and it was Jennings Napier, who was my dad's friend since childhood. But he was working for the company, and he was working in this master bathroom, doing the tile around where they were going to put a jacuzzi. And I was over there talking to him, and there was a Panthers game coming up, and they were playing the Vikings. And being Jennings, who he wasn't related to me, but I used to call him Uncle Jennings. And but we made a bet, and it was for $1, and I can't remember what the spread was, but like I think it was 3 points, and we agreed to that, and I think I had the Panthers and the Vikings won, and so I owed him $1, and I had $1, but it was in pennies, so I gave my dad 100 pennies and told him to take that to Jennings. And he said he would, and he put it in his ashtray because he didn't smoke, so he put his coins in his ashtray. He put the coins in the ashtray, and he never took them to Jennings. So the next time I saw Jennings, Jennings said, "Hey, we bet $1, and you didn't give me my $1." He said, "You know what we do when you don't pay a bet around here?" And I said, "No, what's that?" He said, "We're gonna break your leg." And he didn't break my leg, of course. But I said, "No, I gave it to my dad. My dad was supposed to bring it to you." But he didn't, and finally I did give him the $1. Because I told my dad, "Hey, Dad, give me $1 so they don't break my legs." My dad gave me $1. And but there was like so many other times like that they would be on jobs near ours, the job me and my dad were on, and like I would go hang out with them, and they would make sure that I got something to eat for lunch, McDonald's or whatever. The guys would buy it for me, dad's friends. And like when I was in elementary school and we sold those chocolate bars for $1, my dad would go there with 20 bars or however many was in a box. And the guys, even if they didn't want a chocolate bar, they were just like, here, Joe, give me 10 of them, give me 5. And he would sell them out in like 10 minutes. And so they were always cool like that. And just have so many good memories. There's a guy, Jim, and I've been having a hard time remembering his last name, but I think it was Smith. I thought it was something else with two syllables, but my dad told me it was Smith, Jim Smith. But he worked with with the company for many years. He was at a lot of different jobs that I was on, that I was at, and he always wore this vest, looked like a fishing vest, but I think he wore it because he could keep different tools and stuff that he needed, and like spacers and all kind of stuff in there. But he had a truck just like my dad's. It's a green Dodge Dakota Sport, and he was a great guy. He was always nice to me, funny. He was a big guy, and so I remember him and them working at jobs. Like one time there was this big um, stone, this blue stone job, and those jobs were hard because you needed a lot of the setting material, what they call fat mud. And so me and Jim, I think mostly, and another guy named Angelo, uh, we mixed up a lot of the mud and helped get it to them so they could set it. It was Jennings, Chris, my dad, and Jim, I think, some uh, setting the stone, and it was just fun having all those guys around, just being around all my dad's friends, my uncle's friends, and employees, and just having those memories and kind of, even though I was a kid, feeling like one of the guys, and it was always like that. And I remember at one time when I was a kid, we lived in South Charlotte off of Carmel Road in this condominium that my grandfather had originally owned, and my uncle owned it at that time. He also owned my dad's truck, but my uncle was getting ready to sell it, and we were going to move to Union County where I grew up, and we they came in one day and did the tile. They covered the countertops in tile, and they redid the bathroom tile. Even though that the condo wasn't old, they wanted to make it nice, and so they added all that tile. And I remember my uncle being there, not my uncle, but Jennings, the guy I called my uncle, Jennings. He was there, so like I've known him pretty much my whole life, and we still remember, or he remembered at least some time ago, 20 years ago. He remembered that when I was a little kid, he was on that job at our house, our condo, and my brother, he thought it was me, but me and my brother were in a different part of the neighborhood, and we got into some kind of argument with the guys, and we went back to the condo, and my brother told Jennings, uh, I'm not gonna kill the guy. I'm just gonna beat him up. My brother was like 5 years old at the time, and Jennings thought that was funny because obviously my brother at 5 years old wasn't gonna kill anybody, but just that he said that, and Jennings thought that it was me, but I think he just misremembered because I don't think I would have said that at that age. I would have been 4, but we did get around the neighborhood real good. But my dad, and I mentioned this truck. Um, he used to have this old truck. It was new at the time. He bought it in 1985. It was a 1985 Ford F-150. It was white. My dad normally didn't do this kind of thing, but he had a tag on the front that said Joe. His name's Joe, and he was really proud of that truck because it was his and he bought it, and he liked it. And at our condo, they wouldn't allow pickup trucks because that area was apparently too good for pickup trucks. So my dad had to park it in the field, let's say called a meadow, and then they said no, you can't do that. So he had to park it on the other side of this hill that was beside our condo, and parked it along the street. And it's a busy road, Johnson Road, and he didn't like that. But I was always proud of my dad, even though his work was like um, physical work, and he was laboring and he was using his hands. I was proud of him because like he approached his job the right way, like I've already talked about. He created um, quality work that other people appreciated and they paid money for, and he did it the right way. But I I wanted to be like him. So like when I was a kid, a lot of times when he would come home from work, I would go into his truck and take whatever pieces of tile I could find that were in buckets or whatever. If he had um, scraps or if he had uh, tore out a job, and I would take these scrap pieces of tile and I would mix up thinset and put them on a piece of wood and then stick them to the stick the pieces of tile to the wood. So I was setting tile like my dad in the back of his truck, and I just wanted to be like him so bad, and I still wish, even though I'm 39 years old, that I could be like him because he was really good at his job. He still is, and I appreciate him and the work that he did because it provided for our whole family, but also because like the work that he did was and the way that he did it was very admirable. And I don't know, like he learned tile and then he did it for many years very well, still doing it very well, and I just wanted to have that skill and that ability and that talent that he has, and I think it's something to be proud of. And I've spent my my a lot of my life, other than the 2 years I worked for the company, and working in factories and just doing very physical, tough work. So I understand the physical toll that work takes on the body and the mental toll and the stress and everything. And I know that my dad endured a lot, and he didn't get everything that he deserved, and he didn't get the respect that he deserved um, because he didn't have as much money as my uncle, and he didn't have the same position in the company, the same power. But I'm very proud of my dad, and I'm glad that I had so many opportunities to be with him on work sites and to talk with him and to learn from him and to make memories and um, just to see what it's like. Because like it's like watching someone who's really good at their craft. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a surgeon, or if it's a carpenter, or if it's a baker, or if it's a teacher, or whatever it is. When you watch someone who's really good at what they do, it's amazing because like they have talent and they have skills that other people don't have. So I got to be around that with my dad, and I learned so many different things, and I won't go through all of them. I can't even think of all of them right now, but so many different little things uh, that I still use now, even though I don't do tile now. I still use like for my dad, like little things. Um, just about like how to measure something, how to cut tile, how to clean something, or how to caulk, or how to grout, how to mix thinset, all these different little things. How to carry yourself on a job, how to work with other people, because a lot of times on jobs there's like painters or electricians or other people that you're working around, and you have to communicate with these people to figure out how you can both get your job done, and, and how to deal with customers, because these are the people that they worked with were wealthy people who had really high expectations, so you have to know how to meet their expectations and help them understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what they should expect. And he was always very thorough with his customers, and he explained what he could do, what he couldn't do, what they should expect. And most of the time, he exceeded their expectations, and they always appreciated that. He didn't charge them extra, but he exceeded their expectations, and he did things the right way. And my uncle did too, in a lot of ways. He he expected a lot out of himself. He held himself to a high standard. He held all the people that worked with him to a high standard. He pushed very hard to get a lot of work done every day, to make sure it's done right. So he's working fast and also working, not letting the quality lapse or fall. So we're doing a lot of work, and the builders appreciated that because they're on timelines, and so they don't want to slow down because they're trying to meet their timeline so that the house can close and that the people can move in and live there and have happy lives there, and they can stay under budget and everything else. But so they did that, and during those years, I learned a lot about hard work, and I learned a lot about uh, doing things the right way, and about overcoming things. And I should add this before I wrap it up. But the work was very physical for my dad. I remember when I was in kindergarten, my dad had a hernia. We were at my t-ball game, and his stomach was opening up. I think he had already had the surgery, and it was opening back up. But I remember there being some sort of liquid um, coming out of his stomach, and my dad was out of work for a few weeks, and he was supposed to be at home resting, but instead he painted the inside of our house, and he came to my school. I was in kindergarten, and we were in the computer lab. Computers were new at that time, but we were in the computer lab, and we were learning how to type. And my dad didn't know how to use a computer, but he was helping my teacher teach us how to use the computer, even though he didn't know how. We were typing. I still have some of the stuff that I typed. Didn't spell very well, but I typed. And but I still remember that, my dad being there. It was at the old Shallow Elementary School in Monroe. But I still remember that, and I've told him about how I remember him doing that, because he could have been like laying down, like resting, recovering, like he was supposed to be, but he was actively trying to help our family and trying to help me and my classmates and stuff. So it was great. But my uncle, Chris, he it's a lot of things I liked about him, because like he had this really big personality, and he would hug you and laugh with you and wrestle with you and uh, pull your ear and put you in the headlock, put you in the what's the thing called? I forget what the damn thing is called, but some wrestling moves, and teach me little things about work, and just have discussions with me. And I liked a lot of things about him because he was really funny. He could be funny, and he liked to joke and play around. But he was also, like I said before, he had a very short temper. He could get very angry. He could be kind of scary. He never like beat me or nothing like that. It wasn't like that, but it could make you uncomfortable how angry he would get, and how um, not violent, but just upset and loud, and um, he used very strong language, very strong language. Like wow, adults would not even be comfortable around the kind of language that he used, and he used it towards people in anger, in order to hurt them at that moment, not because he didn't like them or love them, but just he was just angry. And so being around him, you had to be tough, because if it come out on you. But I still loved him, even though I think a lot of the things that he did weren't good for my dad, weren't good for me. And I think he had a lot of failings as a person. There was also a lot of things you could say that were very positive about him. So I try to remember those things about him, instead of being mad about the things that he did that weren't so good, because he's my family. I told him one time, like, the only reason I love you is because you're my uncle and I have no other uncle. You're what I got, so I have no other choice. But I loved him, and I'm glad I got to work with him. I wish he could have lived longer. He died in 2014 when he was about 56. Um, he had been in the tile industry for around 42 years, and so I wish he could have lasted longer so that his family and my family could have had more memories with him, and he could have continued leading the company and working with the employees that were there. Like I said, it grew over time, the number of employees, but I wish he would have had that opportunity, but he just didn't get it. And I'll talk about that in another video about the final years of his life. But I've talked about a lot in this video, but the main idea is that I grew up in the tile industry. My earliest memories were of tile. A lot of my childhood memories had to do with the tile industry, my family's involvement in it, my dad's involvement in it, and my involvement in it because of my dad and my uncle and my grandfather. And I still like being involved in the tile industry, even though I'm not actually involved. I'm actually working in the industry, just being around it. And whenever I see tile work, I think about different things. It reminds me of my time in it as a child and as a young guy. And so I'm glad it's a part of my life. I won't spend the rest of my life doing that. I'm going to do some other things, mostly in law, I hope. But that's my memories. I may think of more. If I do, I'll put them in the comments below. But thank you for listening. Have a good day.